It's a well-known fact here, man, that a lot of times the people in the city that get the most attention are the ones involved in the rap scene, and not necessarily the ones who are doing the most, either good or bad. And the good doesn't get too much attention, and sometimes even the bad, like the really bad, doesn't get too much attention either, man. But this one particular gang I'm going to talk about in this video, if you guys probably seen one video that I made on them, probably like 3-4 years ago now, on my old channel, if you guys were with me back then. This is Goonie Boss, man, the gang in Englewood. This gang is one of the reasons why Englewood, as I've mentioned numerous times, is the #2 most violent neighborhood in the city, man. So prosecutors, they said they have a pretty solid body of evidence against these guys, man. And they're charged in this particular case they're facing right now with 10 murders, which for a case, guys, that's kind of a lot. You know, I mean, you can bury a gang with one murder, okay? 10 murders is like a lot. Especially for a small gang, and they're also charged with gun trafficking and other crimes. And this racketeering trial is set for May. So again, you guys have seen probably some other bloggers too report on them several years ago, man. So it's been a long time coming, this trial. But that trial is up in approximately 1 month, like a month and a half. So they're reporting that this Goonie Boss gang in Englewood spread, quote, terror and mayhem through Englewood from 2014 to 2018. So we're talking about a 4-year span. And that is about the amount of time that a lot of these gangs, you know, with the shorties, they come up, start really doing it. And then by 19, they're all swept up and they just crash and burn real fast. And that's basically what happened with these guys, man. And 4 reputed members were indicted in a racketeering case, according to prosecutors. So the racketeering cases, as you guys know, those are the biggest as far as, like, you know, taking down a whole gang. So the first guy we got is the guy that you guys have heard me talk about before, O-Dog, Romeo Blackman. He's now 27 years old. Then we got a guy named Terrence. He's also 27. Then a guy named Jojo. Well, that's his nickname on the street. He's 31 at this point. So these guys, you know, they were all younger when they, you know, were allegedly doing this stuff. And then you got a guy named Nate. He's 25. And they're set to face trial starting May 15th. So Romeo Blackman, whose, again, street name is O-Dog, the name that he gave himself was allegedly the Reaper. Okay, and they're saying that he was a leader. And again, I tell you guys every time that, you know, I report on one of these racketeering cases, you got to take that with a grain of salt. It's really not true. Like I said, the gang probably did not actually have a leader, especially a guy like younger than the oldest guy in the gang. He may have, you know, had some weight with some of the guys or something like that. But as far as, like, when they say leader these days, that doesn't mean like what Larry Hoover and Chief Malik were or anything close to it. You know what I'm saying? So at any rate, man, federal authorities say that they've amassed a mountain of evidence that they plan to present during what they anticipate will be a 7-week trial. So prosecutors say that they have more than 50,000 Facebook pages. And many of these pages, and when they say 50,000 Facebook pages, that might be like screenshots of particular posts. They may mean posts by that. The way the media is reporting it is pages. I think that probably means posts. Okay, I'm just saying. I don't know this for a fact, but I think that's a pretty solid conclusion to draw based on the fact that 50,000 Facebook pages would just be so time-consuming to even create. But anyways, much of them, they said, showing the Goonie members handling guns and bragging about violence. So they said the gang was so, you know, set on attention that they made T-shirts for themselves. And that may sound outrageous to a jury, but most of these gangs these days do that. And actually, gangs have been doing that since back in the day. Actually, when gangbanging was, you know, starting off in Chicago, these white gangs, they would make like these sweaters, you know, with like patches and stuff like that on them. And so that's kind of a thing that gangs have always been doing. But they said the evidence against the Goonies includes recordings of defendants incriminating themselves about shootings. So self-snitching, okay? And again, these days with the gangs, you don't even need guys to tell because these guys are telling on themselves. Especially the young guys, man. Especially the young guys. And what's really sad about this gang, man, they had one of the moms of one of the guys who was killed who was innocent, who they hit by mistake. And she was, you know, talking about losing her son, man. It was heartbreaking, bro. And not only that, but their territory, which was over by like 71st and Main. So you had kids, you know, walking to school right in the territory of these guys, man. I mean, it was Like, it was just like a terrible situation that they, had created over there in that particular section of Englewood. And I always say Englewood is hot, but there's certain blocks that are definitely hotter than others. And they were making they were just like heating up social media all the way, man. And the streets too, allegedly, according to the feds. So one killing that they're looking at is the killing of a guy named Kenny. This was in 2016. And Kenny was allegedly get back for the murder of a guy named Rob from Goonie Boss. And this, by the way, was another innocent guy that they killed. They killed a couple innocents because this guy Kenny was actually a security guard with no gang ties whatsoever. And his mom was thinking that he might have been the victim of mistaken identity because he was like 34 or something like that. And he had nothing to do with any of the gangs around there. He was just working security. Okay, so that was allegedly like payback, according to the evidence they have so far. Man. According to a 2018 indictment, the gang killed 10 people and was responsible for other non-fatal shootings. So they shot some other people that didn't end up dying. They said that they're a faction of the GDs, which is, that's true. They call Brick Squad a faction of the GDs too. A lot of these gangs in Englewood were like insane, but I'm pretty sure Goonie Boss is mainly GDs. And they said that they participated in a gun trafficking operation from Michigan to Chicago. And again, people are always coming up with all these conspiracy theories about the government and, various groups bringing guns into Chicago so that these guys will kill each other. And I'm telling you, it happens the same way the drugs happen. You got plugs, you got connects, and they get the stuff in here. It's the same thing. The underground black market for this stuff, it works the same way with any product. So they were running the guns from Michigan, and they also had a smash and grab burglary of a downstate gun store. So that was how they were allegedly getting these pipes. And a guy named Christian, who's another reputed Goonie Boss member, is facing a state murder charge in the 2016 killing of a guy named Dave. And this is separate. This is separate from this case. He was in Englewood delivering a pair of shoes to his daughter when he was shot. That guy is 23, the guy being accused of that. He's being held in Cook County Jail, where he also was charged with fighting. Some of the 10 killings listed in the Goonies federal racketeering case include shooting other members of the gang who were thought to be cooperating with authorities. And that right there is the kicker, man. Okay, so as I just mentioned to you guys in that previous video, with the stones, with the familiar stones on the north side, they didn't end up doing anything, but they just suspected, based off of the fact that the police had pulled the guy over with a gun and then let him go, that guy was cooperating with law enforcement. Now, he wasn't the whole time, right? They just pulled him over because they were following these guys. They were surveying him, and they thought that he was about to, go and do something with that pipe. So they stopped him to prevent that. But the case was not wrapped up yet, so they didn't book him. So the rest of his gang started thinking, well, this guy must be telling. Now, these Goonie Boss guys, they ended up shooting guys of members of their own gang that they thought were cooperating with authorities, and this is some like Italian mafia stuff, right? And they said that the gang members used the phrase, quote, walk him to the backyard as code for shooting another member of their own gang. So they were turning up on their own homies who they thought were cooperating with the police. And again, they just thought this. They didn't have as far as they know, as far as the police have presented, there's been no evidence that the guys were actually cooperating. So other shootings were in retaliation for violence against the gang. And they said in court papers, prosecutors provided previously unreleased details about the shootings attributed to the Goonies. So in one case, they say a young Goonie associate was shot and wounded while tying his shoe. He had been walking to school with one of the guys, and the student ended up getting shot because another guy thought that he had snitched. So the unidentified student suffered 9 bullet wounds but survived. And this happened in 2015. So he shot him all those times and he survived just on the suspicion that he was telling. And 3 of the defendants have asked the U.S. District Judge to dismiss the case, saying that the indictment didn't establish that they were involved in a criminal enterprise as defined under the Federal Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. As you guys know, that's referred to as RICO. So they're saying that even though, they may have this other evidence, it doesn't have all the things that it needs to have. The government's case doesn't have all the elements it needs to have in order to present a solid RICO case. And the RICO law was passed more than 50 years ago and originally was designed to make it easier to target the Italian mafia. So they're saying, that, okay, it doesn't have all the aspects of the mafia, so they can't nail us in a RICO case. But in a court filing, a lawyer for O-Dog says the accusation that the Goonies banded together to commit violent crimes against other gangs is something that should be decided in state court and not in federal court. So that's an interesting argument. But the judge rejected the bids to dismiss the case. So the case is going to go forward. So in recent years, the feds have brought conspiracy charges against some other of these gangs, these RICO cases accused of inflicting terror on Chicago. They said those factions include Wicked Town, the Traveling Vice Lords, and you guys heard me talk about them. Then they also brought this against another faction of the Vice Lords in Austin, which was the TVLs, okay? Then they did it against O-Block, okay? And then the Wicked Town members were convicted in trial last year, you guys know, and O-Block are scheduled to go on trial in October, so that's going to happen about 6 months from now. Okay, the O-Block guys are going to go on trial. So they've been using a lot of these RICO cases recently. Now, in this particular case, the prosecutors accused this gang, the Goonie Boss, and by the way, their turf is only about 4 blocks in Englewood, okay? And but they're accusing them of hitting a barber shop, basically doing a shooting over there. And in that shooting, a guy named Gerald died. This was 2016. And they didn't say that O-Dog did that one, but they said that he was involved in that one. And they said one of the guys provided the gun that was, allegedly used in that. So a Goonie member entered the barbershop filled with customers, including a child that was in the barber's chair getting a haircut. And he repeatedly fired at his target, they said, and he missed. And he killed the guy who was sitting in the chair waiting to get a haircut. So he hit the wrong guy. And this happens over and over and over again, right? I mean, this is not unusual at all in Chicago, man. He ended up killing somebody that he wasn't even aiming for. So he's also accused of that same member is also accused of trafficking firearms from Michigan to Chicago in 2016 and 2017. And he and associates paid people with clean records to go to gun stores in Michigan and buy guns for them, which is the so-called straw purchases that paid the buyers $150 per gun. So you would buy a gun for these guys, you pay full price. They'd pay you the price of the gun plus $150 extra. So this is not difficult to do, right? So this is what prosecutors say that this particular member told an associate about Michigan's gun laws. He said, quote, "Guns are misdemeanors out there. You can get as many as you want. They a misdemeanor. You get bumped off, you straight. You be out the same night." Now, whether or not that's true, people from Michigan, if you're from Detroit, you guys can let me know in the comment section if that's true. This particular Chicago member was saying that guns are you get caught with a gun, it's only a misdemeanor in Michigan. I've never heard of that. I've heard actually in Detroit that the laws are quite strict. But I don't know. Any of you guys from Detroit, any of you guys from the Michigan area, you guys let me know in the comment section, man. But one of the guns that this guy allegedly brought to Chicago was linked to 2 other killings and another to 2 non-fatal shootings. So whether or not he did those, they didn't say, but it was just linked to those. And after one trip to Michigan, that guy posted a Facebook video in which he says, "Nothing but killers around here." So he and others pointed guns at the camera, taunting gang rivals, and bragged about shootings and murders that they committed, according to federal prosecutors. So O-Dog is also facing a separate Fed charge. They said that he was in a stolen Jeep Wrangler that smashed into the South Post Guns store in a town called Streeter, which is about 100 miles west of Chicago. And this happened in June of 2016. And they said that him and a few other guys that were in the Jeep at the time stole about 20 guns and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. And after the heist, they went to a home and posed with the guns in a video on Facebook. So again, self-snitching. Now, there's another guy named Rashad and a guy named Keith. These are O-Dog's co-defendants in this case, in that particular case, and they pled guilty, and they've already been sentenced to prison. So it didn't say that they told on anybody else. They just pled guilty, for their own involvement. And the gun theft case against O-Dog has been postponed until his Goonie gang case is wrapped up. So they got a lot against these guys, man. A lot of stuff. They got some of the guys on multiple cases. So even if they beat this case, they may go down for the other case, man. But yeah, the Goonie Boss gang, man. This gang was definitely on the police radar in Chicago, man. Because, like I said, they were super active on social media. And I was just saying this about M Block. And this is the same thing that a lot of these young gangs do, man. They get to be 15, 16, 17, 18, and they start just going on the internet and just putting it all right in the police's lap. And, anybody who's doing that would have to answer the question why, right? Because they're not getting paid to do that. It's like, so what are you doing? Like there's nothing to be gained from that except for clout. Because the police are watching, man. They have a social media, they have people that monitor social media. And social media, even though it can't be used as evidence, as far as like, oh, so they said they did this on Facebook, so they must have done it. That alone is not going to be enough. But it can give them something to put in front of a jury to paint a picture about you, right? So according to the feds, the allegations, O-Dog was involved, and they just say involved. They don't say he was the shooter, but they said he was involved in 7 hits between 2014 and 2016. And one of the victims of one of these killings was a 25-year-old woman who was shot in a car, and a father of 5, like I said, who was shot at that barbershop. So O-Dog's attorney says that his client was declared by the government to be, quote, death penalty eligible if convicted. So he said all the crimes alleged occurred when O-Dog was 19 or younger. He said it's a sad day when our government stoops to the level of those they call criminals and seeks to satisfy their baser instincts with an eye for an eye. So the government is seeking potentially, or could potentially seek the death penalty against O-Dog for doing this. So in 3 of these killings, the Cook County prosecutors have separately charged another person with being the actual shooter. So O-Dog wasn't the trigger puller. And this is an argument that I have with a lot of guys on social media, especially a lot of guys, on the blogs and stuff, because, they put these hits, they add these numbers to guys who were just there. And I don't do that. You guys know how I operate, from back in the day, all the way back from 2015 when I started doing this. I said I only put the body on the guy who pulled the trigger. And if multiple guys pulled the trigger, it would have to be conclusively shown that this is the guy whose shots killed him. Like if one guy hit him in the head and the other guy hit him in the foot, I'm not going to put that on the guy who hit him in the foot. You know what I'm saying? Most other guys who I see on the internet disagree with that. They give the body to everybody that was there. I just disagree, okay? So, in court, right, it can work either way. I've seen it work both ways, so the lawyer's saying, that shouldn't be on him because they're saying somebody else pulled the trigger. So anyways, man, that's kind of a complicated thing. But the feds say that it was a joint effort by the police and FBI. And the authorities say that the members of the gang were celebrating this stuff in a video live streamed on Facebook after a rival was killed in 2016. So again, more self-snitching. So O-Dog was, like I said, he was in the police's, crosshairs, but he didn't get charged with a violent crime until, the whole thing crashed, came down in 2018. In 2014, he was convicted of illegal gun possession. But, he was young at that point. And like I said, he was facing that other criminal case. So the indictment also linked O-Dog to the 2014 killings of a guy named Jonathan, who was 21, a guy named Alonzo, who was 24, a guy named Stanley, who was 18, that woman Crystal, she was 25, along with the 2015 killing of a guy named Andre, and the 2016 killing of a guy named Davon. So again, he wasn't the trigger puller on all these, at least according to the feds, okay? He was just there for some of them, okay? So the one guy, Jonathan, was shot in a hallway of his apartment building. The woman, while she was sat in the car outside of a convenience store, and all the rest of the guys were shot on the street. The indictment doesn't explain Romeo's, O-Dog's role in any of those killings. So allegedly he was just there. So Nate is also tied to the killing of the guy in the barbershop, and Terrence was allegedly involved in the killing of 2 of the other guys, okay? So 3 of the members are charged in Cook County Criminal Court with carrying out murders allegedly linked to O-Dog. So O-Dog was like the biggest fish they were getting here, or at least they're making him out to be the biggest fish. A guy named Quante opened fire on one of the victims from a van. Then another member named DeMarco jumped out of a vehicle and shot another victim. And a guy named Travante walked into the barbershop and shot that guy Jerry, who was a 36-year-old, in retaliation for the shooting of a fellow Goonie boss's member. But again, he hit the wrong guy. So surveillance video from the barbershop showed, the Goonie guys enter the shop. So I don't know if they got their face very clearly on camera. I didn't see the surveillance video, but one of those guys is serving a 3-year sentence in state prison for involuntary manslaughter in a crash that left a woman dead and 12 people injured on the far south side back in 2015. In that, he was fleeing from police in a stolen minivan when he slammed into a Dodge Caravan full of people, and he was 16 at the time. So not a very uncommon thing in Chicago, that is, either, and I don't see that all the time. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section, man. But yeah, Goonie Boss eventually was taken down. I mean, when guys go that hard, they just crash and burn. And you know, that's one of the reasons I posted that video on M Block, you know, because I see them like following the same. I'm not saying they're doing all this stuff that Goonie Boss was, but I think the police have a lot more on Goonie Boss than anything that they have on M Block, a lot more. But nevertheless, you know, it's still these young gangs. You know, Beam Team was doing it. Like they go on social media, man. They make these same social media mistakes over and over and over again, man. Back in the day, like, they would have gotten violated for even like saying that they're in a gang. You know what I'm saying? Like, in any public forum. But the rules now are totally different. Not to mention the fact that it just looks bad. When the only thing to be gained from it is clout, it's basically like a different type of drug. You know, you're pushing a different type of drug, because clout is a drug, man. Clout is that's the most popular drug in the streets these days. And I'd say the deadliest, too. Life after life after life has been lost for clout. And guys get locked up for clout. You know, the clout, it will get you women and stuff like that, but what are these women going to do as soon as you get booked or killed, or when you fall off? You know, or the clout, because clout can leave as soon as it can come in. So anyways, man, let me know what you guys think in the comment section, though. This is your boy, Winnie C. Report. I'm out.